The night was cold, and the streets of the alien city were full of noise, lights, and people. Shining towers rose into the dark sky, and flying machines passed above. Merchants shouted, soldiers marched, and music echoed from the bars. But in the corner of a broken wall, under a flickering streetlight, sat a widow alien with her small child. Her skin was pale, her eyes tired, and her clothes torn. She looked thin, almost like a shadow. Her child coughed weakly, and she hugged him close, trying to keep him warm. No one stopped to look at them. No one gave food. No one cared. She whispered softly, "Stay awake, my little one. Please, stay awake." People passed by, some laughed, some spat on the ground. To them she was nothing, just another beggar, just another useless mouth in the city. Her husband had died long ago in the mines, crushed under heavy machines. Since then, she had begged for food, begged for work, but always been rejected. The rulers of this world did not care for widows, and the rich only looked away. To them, she and her child were already dead. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Pressing her child closer, she thought of walking into the shadows and never returning. She thought of ending this pain, ending this hunger. But the child's small hand held her tightly, and she could not. Her eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "No one will save us. No one will ever help us." Then, the sound of heavy footsteps broke through the noise. The crowd grew silent for a moment, turning their heads. A human walked through the city gates, tall and strong, his face hard like stone. Humans were rare here, and feared by many. They were said to be dangerous, strange, full of power. Some said humans could not be trusted. Others said they were monsters of war. The widow froze, her heart beating fast. The human's boots echoed against the metal street, each step closer. People moved aside, whispering, some in fear, some in curiosity. The human's eyes scanned the street like a hunter, sharp and focused, and then his gaze stopped. On her, the widow gasped, pulling her child closer. She lowered her head, hoping he would pass, but the human did not walk past. He stopped, standing right in front of her. The crowd grew quiet, as if the whole city held its breath. "What does a human want with a beggar widow?" Someone whispered. Another voice muttered, "Maybe he will kill her, maybe he will take her child." Fear spread quickly, but no one dared to interfere. The widow trembled, her child coughed again. She raised her eyes slowly, meeting the human's stare. His eyes were cold but not cruel, sharp but not hateful. For a long moment he said nothing, just looked at her and the child. Then he spoke, his voice deep, calm, and strong. "You are dying here," he said. The widow's lips shook. She whispered back, "Yes, but no one cares." The human crouched down, closer to her level. He studied the child, then looked into her eyes. "There is still life in you," he said. "Do you want to live, or do you want to die in this street?" The widow blinked in shock. She did not understand. No one had ever asked her this. No one had ever given her a choice. She could not answer, her throat dry. Her child coughed again, and she cried quietly. The human stood, straight and tall. "Come," he ordered and reached out his hand. The widow hesitated, fear filling her. What if this was a trick? What if he wanted to use her? But when she looked into his eyes again, she saw something different. Not pity, not anger, but something else. Something she had not seen in years. It was determination. The crowd watched in silence. Some whispered, "Why is a human helping her?" Others laughed nervously. "Maybe he is mad. Maybe he wants to play a cruel game." But the widow felt her heart beat faster, her fear mixing with a small spark of hope. Her shaking hand slowly reached out, touching his. His grip was strong, pulling her up from the cold ground. The human lifted the child into his arms with surprising gentleness. The widow followed, weak and unsure. The people stared, but no one dared to stop him. The human walked forward, the widow at his side. The noise of the city returned, But something had changed. For the first time, the widow was not invisible. All eyes were on her because of the human. She could not believe it. She whispered to herself, "Why? Why is he helping us? What does he want?" Her heart was full of fear, confusion, and fragile hope. She knew her life was about to change, but she did not know if it would be for salvation or for something far worse. And as they disappeared into the streets, the crowd still whispered, "Why would a human care for a poor alien beggar?" The widow opened her eyes slowly. She was not lying on the cold street anymore. She was on a bed, soft and warm, inside a small, quiet room. Her child slept beside her, his breathing steady, his face no longer pale. The smell of food filled the air. Real food, not the rotten scraps she used to beg for. For a moment, she thought it was a dream. She reached out to touch her child, to make sure he was alive. He was warm, his chest rising and falling. Tears came to her eyes. She whispered, "You live, my little one. You live." Then she remembered the human, the tall figure, the strong voice, the hand that pulled her from the street. Her heart pounded with fear. Why had he saved them? What did he want? No one gave anything for free, especially not to a beggar alien, especially not a human. The door opened with a heavy sound. The human entered, carrying a tray with food. His steps were steady, his face still hard like stone. He placed the tray on the table without a word. The widow sat up quickly, pulling her child closer. Her body shook, fear rising again. The human turned to her, his voice calm but sharp. "Eat," he said. "You need strength. Your child needs strength." The widow stared at the food, bread, fruit, and warm broth. Her stomach growled loudly, but she did not move. She whispered, Why are you doing this? What do you want from us?" The human looked at her in silence. Then he sat on a chair across the room, his eyes watching her carefully. "No one helped you," he said. "No one cared. I did." The widow shook her head. "Humans do not help. Humans do not care. Everyone knows this." The human's lips moved into the smallest shadow of a smile. "Everyone is wrong," he replied. The widow did not know if she could believe him. Her heart was torn between hunger and fear. Finally, she broke. She reached for the bread. Her hands shaking, she took a small bite and then another. It was soft, warm, real, and she almost cried as the taste filled her mouth. Her child stirred, opening his eyes weakly. She gave him a piece and he chewed slowly, smiling for the first time in weeks. The human watched them quietly, his face unreadable. After a while, the widow whispered, "You saved us, but why? Tell me the truth." The human leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "I have seen too. Much death, too much cruelty. I will not walk past another grave waiting to happen." His eyes darkened as if shadows of the past lived inside them. "But," he added, "I do not save people for nothing. There is always a cost." The widow froze. Her fear returned. She held her child close, whispering, "I knew it. I knew you wanted something." The human raised a hand slowly, not in anger but in control. "Listen," he said. "I do not want your body. I do not want your soul. I want your loyalty." She blinked in confusion. "Loyalty?" she repeated. The human nodded. "The world you live in is cruel. It has no mercy. I need someone who will stand with me, not against me." The widow shook her head. "I am weak. I am nothing. I cannot fight. I cannot stand with you." The human leaned closer, his eyes sharp. "You were left to die. But you still held on. You still protected your child. You are stronger than you think." Her heart trembled at his words. No one had ever told her she was strong. No one had ever believed in her. The human's voice softened just slightly. "Take the food, take the shelter. In return, give me your trust, nothing more for now." He sat back in his chair, waiting. Silent, patient like a hunter. The widow looked at the food, at her child, at her own trembling hands. Trust, he asked for trust, but trust was dangerous. Still he had saved them. Still, he had given life back to her child. Her lips moved slowly, whispering, "I do not know if I can trust you, but I will try." The human nodded once. As if that answer was enough, he stood, his tall figure filling the room. "Then stay here," he said. "No one will harm you, no one will touch you. I give you my word." The widow felt her chest tighten. A human's word. Was it worth anything? She did not know. But for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of safety. The human walked to the door, pausing before he left. He turned his head slightly, his voice low but clear. "This is only the beginning," he said. The door closed behind him, leaving her in silence. The widow sat still, her mind racing. What beginning? What plan did he have? Why would a human risk everything for a poor alien beggar? The food warmed her stomach. The child slept peacefully, but her heart was restless, her thoughts filled with fear and questions. And outside, in the shadows of the city, whispers spread like fire. "The human has taken the widow and her child," they said. Why would a human protect an alien beggar? The answer was hidden in the human's past, a past no one dared to speak of. The city streets were never safe, not for beggars, not for widows, and especially not for anyone under human protection. The widow learned this truth only days after moving into the small safe house. Rumors spread quickly, and with rumors came danger. People whispered in the markets, soldiers muttered in the taverns, and even children repeated the words, "The widow belongs to the human," they said. She is his pet, his toy, his tool. Everywhere she went, she felt eyes on her, some filled with curiosity, others filled with hate. Once she was invisible, now she was seen too much. She wished for the shadows again, but the shadows had left her the moment she took the human's hand. One evening, as the sun sank and the neon lights lit the streets, the widow walked outside to fetch water. Her child slept in the room, safe for the moment. The streets were quiet, too quiet. She filled her small jar, but when she turned back, her heart froze. 3 men stood there, blocking her way. They were large, armored with scrap metal, their eyes full of cruelty. She knew them, the same thugs who once spat at her and kicked her when she begged on the street. They grinned, their sharp teeth showing. Well, one sneered. "The human's pet has come out alone." The widow trembled, clutching the jar. She tried to step back, but they closed in. "Does he feed you well?" another asked. "Does he make you bow, make you crawl, make you beg for his scraps?" The third one spat near her feet. "We don't like humans here, and we don't like those who hide under their shadow." Her heart raced. She thought of running, but her child was alone inside. If they followed her, the child would be in danger. She tried to stay calm, whispering, "Please, I don't want trouble, let me go." The thugs laughed, cruel and loud. "You already brought trouble, widow," the first one said. "By standing. With a human, you made yourself our enemy." The widow's hands shook so much that the jar slipped and shattered on the ground. The sound echoed through the narrow street. Her legs weakened. She felt she would fall. But before the thugs could move closer, heavy footsteps filled the air. The human appeared, tall and silent, his shadow stretching across the wall. His eyes burned like fire in the dark. He stopped between the thugs and the widow, his voice calm but deadly. "Step away," he said. The thugs laughed again, but there was unease in their eyes. "Look at this," one sneered. "The great human warrior protecting trash." Another spat. "You think you can walk in our city, take what you want, protect who you want? You don't belong here." The human did not flinch. His hands stayed at his sides, but the air around him felt sharp, heavy, dangerous. "I will—" "Say it once," he repeated. "Step away." The widow held her breath, her heart beating like thunder. She knew violence was seconds away. The first thug lunged forward, swinging a heavy metal rod. The human moved like lightning, catching the rod in one hand, twisting it, snapping it in two. With the same motion, he struck the thug across the chest, sending him crashing into the wall, gasping for air. The second thug shouted and rushed with a knife. The human sidestepped, his hand striking the thug's wrist. The knife fell. A sharp kick sent the thug sprawling into the dirt. The third thug froze, his grin gone, his eyes wide with fear. The human stepped closer, his voice low. "Run," he ordered. The thug stumbled back, dragging his fallen friends, disappearing into the shadows. The widow stood in silence, her legs weak, her breath unsteady. The human turned to her, his eyes still sharp. "You cannot be weak," he said. "They will come again. Others will come too." She swallowed hard, whispering, "Why? Why do they hate me so much now?" The human's voice was steady. "Because you stand with me, because I chose you, and that choice makes you dangerous in their eyes." Her tears fell. "I never wanted danger. I only wanted my child to live." The human's expression softened just a little. "That is why you must grow stronger for him, for yourself." He reached down, offering his hand again. "You are not a beggar anymore. Not while you walk beside me." The widow hesitated, but then she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, pulling her up from the broken jar in the shattered street. For the first time she felt not only protected but also challenged. Was not only saving her, he was demanding something from her. The next day, whispers spread even louder across the city. The story of the human defeating 3 thugs reached every ear. Some called him mad, others called him dangerous. But one thing became clear: the widow was no longer invisible. She was under the shield of a human, and that shield was both a blessing and a curse. At night, as she watched her child sleep, she thought of the human's words. "You are not a beggar anymore." She touched her child's hair, whispering softly, "Then what am I now?" Her heart carried both fear and hope. Because the answer to that question was just beginning to form, the widow could not sleep that night. The safe house was quiet, her child breathing softly beside her, but her mind was full of questions, too heavy to rest. Why had the human saved her? Why did he fight for her? And why did he speak as if he carried a great burden? She had seen the way he moved in battle, not like a common fighter, not like a mercenary. His skill was sharp, trained, deadly. Every strike was precise, every motion full of discipline. This was not the way of an ordinary man. This was the way of a soldier who had seen war. The city whispered louder each day. Some said the human was a criminal, hunted by his own kind. Others said he was once a guard for powerful leaders. Until he betrayed them, the widow tried to ignore the whispers, but they crept into her heart like shadows. One evening, when her child was asleep, she gathered her courage and asked. The human sat near the table, sharpening a blade in silence. The sound of stone against steel echoed in the small room. She spoke softly. "Who are you, really?" The human did not look up, his hand steady. "You already know what I am," he replied. "A soldier, nothing more." The widow shook her head. "No, not just a soldier. You fight like someone who has commanded others. You speak like someone who has carried more than a blade." For the first time, the human paused, the blade still in his hand. His eyes lifted slowly, and she saw something in them she had not seen before. It was pain. He set the blade down, his voice low. "I was once a protector," he said. "I served a great leader, a human who dreamed of peace between our kind and yours." The widow's breath caught. She had heard stories of such a man, but only in whispers. A leader who had been betrayed, a dream that had been crushed in blood and fire. "They said he was murdered," she whispered. The human nodded, his jaw tight. "He was, and I failed him." Silence filled the room, heavy and cold. The widow stared at him, unsure if she should believe. "You failed," she repeated softly. "How?" The human's voice hardened. "I was his guard, sworn to protect him. I saw the blades coming. I fought, I bled, but I did not reach him in time. My failure destroyed his dream, and my name was cast into the dirt." The widow's hands trembled, her mind racing. If this was true, the man who sat before her was not just a soldier. He was a fallen protector, a man with a broken oath. But why was he here? Why was he helping her? "You carry this guilt," she whispered. "But why save? Me, why save my child? The human leaned forward, his eyes sharp again. Because I swore I would never fail again, he said. I cannot bring back my leader. I cannot undo my shame, but I can protect those who cannot protect themselves. And this time, I will not fail. His words cut deep into her. She saw the fire in his eyes, the weight he carried. He was not helping her out of pity. He was helping her because she had become his vow, and yet, doubt still burned inside her. What if you fall again? She asked, her voice shaking. What if they come for us and you cannot stop them? The human's gaze was steady, unshaken. Then I will fall standing, not crawling, and I will take them with me. The widow shivered at his words, half in fear, half in awe. He was a man who had lost everything, but still carried a sword for others. That night, when the human left the room, she sat beside her child and thought deeply. Her life had always been small, weak, hidden in shadows, but now she was tied to a man whose past was full of fire, whose future was full of danger, and she could not turn away, not anymore. The next day the streets were alive with more rumors. The city rulers had heard that the human was alive and moving freely. They sent spies, soldiers in plain clothes, to watch his every step. The widow noticed them, men pretending to buy fruit, women pretending to beg, all with sharp eyes on the poor human. Her heart grew heavy with fear. That evening she whispered to him, "They are watching you, the rulers, the guards, they want you gone." The human only nodded, calm as stone. "Let them watch," he said. "They will see what they fear most. They will see that I am not broken." The widow looked at him in silence. Part of her wanted to run, to take her child and vanish into the wastelands. But another part of her, stronger now, wanted to stay, to see what this human would do. Her life was no longer her own. It was tied to his, bound by his vow, and in the deep of night, as the city lights flickered, she whispered to herself, "If his past is true, then his future will decide mine. But can a fallen protector truly rise again?" Outside, in the dark alleys, the spies reported back to their masters. "The human lives," they said, and "He shelters the widow and her child." The ruler's answer was sharp, cruel, and final. "Then let the storm begin." The city was restless. Whispers turned into shouts. Rumors turned into threats. The rulers of the alien world had grown impatient. For them, a human living freely inside their walls was a danger too great. And worse, he had taken an alien widow, and her child under his protection. It was not only strange, it was unacceptable. The widow felt the storm coming before she saw it. She noticed the stares grow sharper, the silence heavier. Shopkeepers refused to sell her food. Neighbors shut their doors when she passed. Even the children who once threw stones now hid behind their parents. The city was turning against her. Piece by piece, one afternoon, soldiers came to the market square. Their armor glistened, their banners flew high. The people gathered, curious and afraid. A commander stood tall and declared, "The rulers have spoken. Humans are a threat, and anyone who shelters them is a traitor." The widow froze where she stood, her heart pounding. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others whispering in fear. The commander raised his hand. "There is a human in this city. He hides among you, and he has taken one of our own, a widow into his shadow. This cannot stand." The widow felt the weight of every eye turned toward her. Her legs shook, she wanted to run, but her child held her hand. The commander's voice was sharp. "Bring them forward, the widow and her child. Let them confess. Let them hand over the human." Gasps filled the square. The crowd parted, and soldiers began searching the streets. She hurried back to the safe house, fear twisting her stomach. The human was waiting inside, calm as ever, sharpening his blade. "They know," she whispered. "The rulers, the soldiers, they demand. I betray you." The human looked up, his eyes steady. "And will you?" he asked quietly. Her lips trembled. "If I give you to them, they will let me live. They will let my child live." The words cut her heart like knives. Her child's small hand gripped hers, innocent eyes looking up with trust. The human rose, tall and unshaken. "If you choose survival without me, I will not stop you," he said. "But if you choose to stand with me, then know this. The storm will not end. It will only grow." Tears filled her eyes. She thought of the street where she once begged, the hunger, the pain, the night no one cared. Then she thought of the human's hand, pulling her from the dirt, giving her food, shelter, dignity. Her voice shook but grew stronger with each word. "I will not betray you. I will not crawl back. To the shadows, if we die standing." The human's face softened just slightly. "Good," he said. "Then we stand together." That night, soldiers came. Their boots thundered against the streets, their torches lit the walls. The safe house shook with their shouts. "Open the door, hand over the human, or burn with him." The widow held her child close, fear choking her. The human stood in the center of the room, his blade gleaming in the firelight. He turned to her, his voice low. "Take your child. Stay behind me. Do not fear the noise. Fear only losing your will." The door burst open. Soldiers stormed inside, their spears raised. The first wave rushed at the human, shouting. But the room became a storm of steel and shadow. The human moved like a beast unleashed, his blade flashing, his fists striking. One soldier fell, then another. Blood and cries filled the air. The widow pressed against the wall, shielding her child's eyes. Her heart raced. Fear and awe tangled. Within her, the human was not just fighting. He was a force, every move precise, unstoppable. The soldiers began to falter. Realizing too late that they had underestimated him, the commander outside shouted, "Burn the house, trap them inside." Flames licked the walls, smoke filled the air. The widow coughed, panic rising. The child cried, "Mother, I can't breathe." The human grabbed them both, his voice strong. "We are leaving now." With a single strike, he broke through the back wall, pulling them into the night. The streets were chaos, soldiers chasing, fire spreading, people screaming. The widow ran, clutching her child, her legs burning with fear and strength. The human fought off every soldier who dared to block their path, but the city was closing in. Too many, too fast. At last, they reached the edge of the walls. The human lifted the child into his arms, his breath heavy but his eyes still sharp. "We cannot stay," he said. "This city will never accept us now." The widow looked back once, seeing the flames rise, hearing the shouts of hate. Her old life was gone, the streets she once begged on were ashes, there was no return, she whispered to her child, to herself, to the night. "This is the storm and we are inside it." The human's voice answered, steady as stone, "And only those who stand together will survive it." The night was alive with fire and screams. Behind them the city burned, flames rising like angry towers. The widow clutched her child as the human led them through narrow alleys and broken gates. The sound of soldiers echoed everywhere, their horns sharp, their boots thunderous. The hunt had begun, and they were the prey. The human carried the child with one arm, his blade ready in the other. His steps were fast but steady, his eyes scanning the darkness. The widow struggled to keep up, her breath sharp, her legs weak. But fear pushed her forward, fear for her child, fear of losing what little she had left. They reached the outer walls where the city met the wasteland. The human found a hidden path between broken stones, a path few knew. "Go," he ordered, pushing the widow ahead. She hesitated, looking back at the burning city. Everything she had ever known was turning to ash. But then she remembered the stones thrown at her, the hunger, the spit, the hate. There was nothing left to mourn. They slipped out into the wastelands. The ground was rough, the air dry and bitter. Dark shapes of broken machines and rusted towers filled the horizon. This was no place for the weak, no place for a child. And yet, it was safer than the city they had left behind. Hours passed as they walked. The widow's legs ached. Her throat burned with thirst. But she said nothing, only followed the human shadow. The child slept in his arms, safe for the moment. The silence of the wasteland was heavy, broken only by the wind. Then, a distant sound reached them, the Widow froze, listening. It was the echo of engines, sharp and growing closer. The human's jaw tightened. They are hunting us. He set the child down gently, placing a hand on the widow's shoulder. Take him and run if I fall, he said, his voice calm. Her heart clenched, fear flooding her. No, she whispered. You cannot fall. Not now. The engines grew louder, lights cutting through the dark. Riders appeared, soldiers on machines with glowing wheels. They surrounded the broken path, weapons raised, their laughter cruel. There he is, one shouted. The traitor human and his pet widow. The widow held her child close, trembling. The human stood in front of them, blade ready. The riders attacked, speeding forward, firing bolts of light. The human moved with deadly grace, dodging, striking. He pulled one soldier from his machine, slamming him into the dirt. Another charged, but the widow screamed, warning him in time. The human turned, striking the rider down before the blade could touch him. But there were too many. Bolts of energy cracked through the air, one grazing the human's side. He stumbled, blood dark against his armor. The widow cried out, "No." The child clung to her, tears streaming. The human fought on, but his steps slowed, his breath heavy. At last he struck down the last rider, but then he fell to one knee. The widow rushed to him, her hands shaking. Blood ran down his side, his face pale, but his eyes still sharp. "Leave me," he said, his voice rough. "Take your child, run, live." Her heart broke at his words. How could she leave the one who saved her, the one who gave her hope? Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was strong. "No, I will not leave you, not now, not ever." She looked around, her eyes searching the broken wasteland. Her gaze fell on one of the fallen machines, its engine still alive. She had never driven one, but she had no choice. She dragged the human toward it, her arms shaking with the weight. "Hold on," she begged. "Do not close your eyes." The human tried to rise, but his strength failed. The widow lifted her child onto the machine, then climbed on herself. She pulled the human up behind them, his body heavy, his blood warm against her. The engine roared, the wheels spun, and for the first time she was the one carrying him. The machine raced into the night, leaving the bodies in flames behind. The widow held tight, her child crying against her, the human silent but alive. Her heart pounded, fear and courage mixing. Inside her, she whispered into the wind, "I will not fail you as you did not fail me." The wasteland stretched ahead, endless and dark. The human leaned weakly against her, his voice faint but firm. "You are stronger than you know," he whispered. Her eyes burned with tears, but she smiled through them. "I am learning," she said. "Because of you." The night swallowed them. The city left far behind. But the storm was not over. It had only changed its shape. The rulers would not stop, the soldiers would not rest, and the widow knew the path ahead would be harder than anything before. Still, as the machine roared across the wasteland, she felt something new. Not only fear, not only pain, but fire. The fire of a woman who would no longer crawl, who would no longer beg. She would stand, she would fight, and she would not leave the human who saved her. Together they would face whatever waited in the dark. Years passed since the night of fire and flight. The widow was no longer the broken beggar who sat in the cold streets. The child was no longer sick and coughing, and the human was no longer a hunted shadow. They had built something new, far from the burning city. At first it was only survival, hiding in the wastelands, finding food, finding water. But the human's strength and the widow's courage turned survival into hope. Other outcasts joined them, poor workers, forgotten widows, abandoned children, even deserter soldiers. The small camp grew into a village, the village grew into a stronghold. And from the stronghold, a new voice rose. The human led them, not as a tyrant, not as a master, but as one who stood in front of danger first. He fought raiders, he fought soldiers, he fought storms, and the widow stood beside him, her child at her side. The people began to call her mother of the camp, mother of the lost. Her voice carried warmth, her hands carried healing. She who was once invisible now carried the weight of many lives. But the rulers of the old city did not forget. Their hate grew stronger as the humans' influence spread. They sent armies into the wasteland, armies meant to crush him. Each time they came, they were pushed back. Each time they fell, the legend of the human grew larger, and beside that legend, the widow's name also rose. One night, as the firelight flickered across the camp, the widow stood watching the stars. The human walked to her side, older now, scarred but unbroken. "Do you ever think of the city?" he asked. Her eyes narrowed. "The city that spat on me, that left my child to die, no, I do not think of it." But after a moment she added, "I think of the people still trapped there, the ones who beg, as I once begged." The human's gaze hardened. "One day we may return, not as beggars, but as leaders," he said. She turned to him, her heart heavy with the weight of the past and the pull of the future. Would they ever bow to an alien widow? Would they ever bow to you? The human's lips curved slightly. "They will bow to survival, and we are survival." Months later, the storm finally came. The rulers sent their greatest army. Thousands, strong, marching into the wasteland. The stronghold shook with fear, the people whispered. The widow saw it in their eyes, the doubt. The same doubt she once carried when she begged in the streets. But she stepped forward, standing where all could see her. Her voice was not soft anymore. It carried fire. "They called me worthless. They called me trash. But today I stand with you, and I will not bow again. If you have ever been hungry, if you have ever been forgotten, then stand with us now, for this is our home." The people shouted, voices rising like thunder. The human raised his blade, his eyes blazing. That night, the wasteland burned with battle. The army of rulers clashed with the army of the lost. The human fought at the front, his strikes fierce, his will unbroken. The widow carried the wounded, guided the fighters, and never once faltered. When the dust settled, the army of the rulers was broken. Their banners lay in the dirt, their generals, dead or fleeing. The stronghold still stood, scarred but unshaken. And in that moment, the widow and the human were no longer outcasts. They were leaders. Years later, the child grown into a young man stood at their side. The stronghold had become a city, stronger than the old one. Humans and aliens walked together in its streets, working, building, living. The human was now a leader, respected and feared. And the widow, once a beggar, was his wife, his equal, his partner. She remembered the night it began. The flickering streetlight, the cold ground, her starving child, and the human's boots stopping in front of her, his hand reaching down. That single moment had carried her from dirt to fire, from fear to strength, from nothing to everything. Now, as she stood on the balcony of their hall looking at the people below, she whispered to herself, "I was once invisible, but now they see me, not as a beggar, not as a shadow, but as a mother, as a leader, as his wife." The human joined her, his hand resting on hers. "They see you because you never gave up," he said. "You rose when the world wanted you to crawl." The widow looked at him, her heart full. "No," she said softly. "We rose together." And in the silence of the night, in the glow of the rebuilt city, the storm that once tried to destroy them was gone. In its place stood a truth unshakable. Humans were feared, humans were doubted. But when no one else cared, a single human had stopped, had chosen to protect, had chosen to lift an alien widow from the dirt. And that choice had changed everything.